Hello, Launch family. Welcome back to Dare to Launch. My name is Chris. And as always, I'm joined by my co host, Mr. Jeff Walker.
Hey, everyone.
And we're also joined by a very special guest today, Mr. Dan Walker. Welcome back.
Hey, glad to be here.
Excited to be talking to both of you today because what we just went through over the last week, when we're recording this at least, was pretty cool. We just did this PLF Live Encore presentation, and I thought this would be a really awesome thing to reflect back with both of you, since pretty heavily involved in creating this. Maybe Jeff, Dan, could you talk about like what this was, and then like how did you feel it went this last weekend from your perspective?
So we have this event that we've been doing every year since 2010. I mean, actually, one year we did it twice. So this was, I think, our 17th PLF Live. That's the name of the event. So we've had thousands and thousands and thousands of people go through it. And for years it was in person. And the first one we probably had 400, and then it just grew and grew and grew. And by 2019 was the last time we did it in person, and we probably about 1,200 people register for that. And then we had to go virtual in 2020. And so we've been doing it. In fact, we were one of the first very, very big events to go completely virtual and go super fancy. And so what we just did was number 17. But this one, it was the encore. It was an encore of our June event. And so what we did was we used some recordings and some live elements. So it was a big evolution. And one of the reasons we did this was we wanted to be able to give this event in January when people are just starting out for the year and they're all ready to plan out their launch and get launched for the year. And so we wanted to do it in January, and we wanted to try to do it with a little bit less work, because when we do this, it's all consuming for the team for weeks and weeks and weeks. Probably super intense planning for at least 6 weeks. I didn't want my team working crazy hours during the holidays. So we said, how can we do this and deliver a really great event and not work quite so hard? So that was the intention. So the idea was to use some recordings, some live, and go from there and see what we could deliver in terms of if we could give a great PLF Live experience.
Looking back now, how do you feel it went? Did we do that? Was it successful?
Well, we learned a lot. I think it was successful. I think we delivered an amazing experience. I can't remember a PLF Live since we went virtual where everyone was so unanimously just incredibly stoked. I mean, just people absolutely loved the event. That being said, we had some tech issues. We had some issues with using the recordings. And so we were dancing as fast as we could to stay ahead of it. And in the end, we probably ended up doing about 50% of it using the recordings and 50% of it me presenting live to the audience.
I was part of it from sort of the, Zoom moderation, and I was part of some of the live elements. And, when people want to talk to an expert on Launch Club, I was involved in that. And, watching the event, what I noticed was that the culture, I've been through a few of these PLF Lives now too, by the way, since I've been working with you for like 9 years, I think. And I know what the event's supposed to feel like, right? And when we got into day one, it took, I want to say just the first hour, I was like, oh, this is exactly the same. Like, even though there's a recording element to it, the energy of the people in the chat, the energy and the culture that is created in this kind of microcosm of a live event felt almost the exact same as what people would experience if it was like you directly on stage saying things, to them and teaching them. But that was me in the observation of like the Zoom room and being in the chat and being with the people. So I thought that was really cool that we were able to create that out of something that was a recording. Why do you think that is the case? Or is there something you think that makes it that we can create that with recording versus live?
Well, I think there's a big part of it. Like, the whole idea behind this was that if someone's participating in a live virtual event, and honestly, if you're participating in a live event of any kind, like say whether you're in a grand ballroom at a hotel with 1,000 other people in person, or whether you're tuning into Zoom watching a virtual event with 1,000 other people in person, there are parts of the event in which you are passively consuming. So there's someone who is teaching. There's someone on stage. They're sharing information. You're learning from them. You're taking notes. You're thinking about how to apply it. And then there are the parts that are, to use the tricky word, live. The parts in which you're actually interacting, the parts in which you're doing things, the part in which you're talking to other attendees, you're brainstorming, you're meeting people, you're making connections, you're having Q&A, you're asking questions with the host, or with, in our case, with our coaching team. We had, our entire coaching team there interacting with people. And so our thinking coming into this was whether or not the part where you're passively consuming, the part where you are being taught by someone on stage, whether that is happening literally, someone live in that moment is standing up in front of a camera or standing on a stage and talking to you, or whether they were standing up on a stage or in front of a camera talking to you at a asynchronous time, the experience is roughly the same for people. They're still sitting there, they're being spoken to, and they're learning. So we were like, well, a way to, these events are an insane amount of work for a huge amount of people. So a way to really make that we can deliver the event more often. Because that's the thing, we usually do this event once a year. And one of the biggest reasons we do that is because it is such a big lift. And so it's not like we're looking for a way to be lazy and have less work. It's like, well, how do we bring this out more? It's like, okay, well, we make this something that we can deliver more. And so we took those parts that in my opinion, it doesn't really make a difference for someone's experience, how it's being captured, whether it was recorded at a previous time or whether it's being recorded still in that exact moment. Someone's having the same experience. So we delivered those parts via a pre-recorded video, but then all the parts where we were like, okay, this is a part where live matters. So the coaching, the interaction, breakout sessions, community sessions, times when people could get direct coaching, times when people could meet people. We kept all of those elements completely live. So we delivered an experience. And I think in so many ways, it really did work out like this. We delivered an experience that was pretty seamless and really very comparable in terms of experience to an event that was 100% delivered live. But if we did this event 100% live, we wouldn't have been able to do it in this, in this first couple days of the new year when there's all this excitement and energy. And so it just opened up possibilities for us and for the audience.
Just to make clear to people is we weren't trying to fool anyone. This wasn't a bait and switch type of deal. We were very upfront when we used the recordings. But even when we were doing the recordings, they were going out live. So people were watching live. They were part of the chat roll live. Our entire team was in the chat answering questions. It was all above board. We weren't trying to fool anyone. And although people kept on forgetting because it was so immersive. Even our team kept on forgetting. And we had a few very, very interesting or fun interactions with our team because our whole team's communicating in Slack in the background. And they're at one point, they're coaching me on the timing when the timing was already set because it was a recording.
Yeah, there was questions like, wait, is Jeff on right now or no? Or it's like, oh, actually, this is a recording part. And what I noticed in the chat was there was just as many aha moments as people are there getting the value as there was if it was Jeff teaching live. The thing is, the value is the value, right? Whether you taught it in whenever the last time and it's pre-recorded, the important thing is that what they're experiencing in that moment is these aha moments because of the way it's being taught and what is the value there for them. So the impact of all of that was super powerful for people as we saw them going through this experience. I wanted to ask, what are some things you learned about doing this experience this way instead of doing it in the traditional way where, again, there's all this prep and there's a lot of work to put in something maybe and make it this live thing. But what did you guys learn about doing this experience?
Well, one of the things I got to watch. And so I'm actually watching a recording of me from a few months ago teaching, and I got to observe everyone's reaction to that in the chat. And that was, this was number 17 that I've done. And of course, they've evolved and changed, and they're always changing, but still, I learned so much just watching people's reactions, the things that really landed and the things that's like, there's a few areas I need to tighten that up. I took too much time. That was the number one thing is, I think a lot of, let's just call it a performance, because, I was on stage, and most performers, I think, tend to be pretty self-critical or hypercritical. And so I was watching myself. I'm like, okay, yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Every now and then I'd be like, oh yeah, that was really good. That really landed. But it was super cool. And it will definitely impact me going forward. Just being able to understand, because normally, even when I'm on stage, even in person, you're getting so much feedback from the audience, but to be able to completely step outside yourself, which is what this allowed, was pretty amazing.
That must have been surreal for you to be able to just watch, because was this like the first PLF Live you've really watched? Because
it was.
Right, like, because you were always on stage doing it, right? So to actually look back and see how it's being done, that's probably, I can imagine that's super powerful.
Yeah, there's a couple sections on day 2. It's like, oh, I can cut 20 minutes out of that because I didn't need to do that. And it's just like, okay, get over yourself, Jeff. Just get over yourself. It's like,
Wow, that's awesome. What about for you, Dan? What are some things that you learned about through this experience going through it? You were doing a lot of live elements to it. I want to give that context before you speak, is that there were some live elements because you were almost our liaison to the recording parts of it. And whenever we went to them, you would introduce them or you would bring people back in. You were like the main host for this whole thing, which was kind of cool. So what was your experience like?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones that I had is, I think transparency is super important when you're doing an event like this. And I think people might worry about doing an event like this because it might be a worry of like, oh, are people going to get upset, or are people going to be annoyed, or feel tricked or something? And it's like, well, maybe, but not if you're straight up with them, And so I think that was one of the most powerful things that we did, is that we leaned into what it was, and we didn't try to make it into something that it wasn't. Like the fact that we came on and like some of the very first stuff that Jeff said at the beginning of each day is he explained the format. He said, hey, here's what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. And because of that, it set the event up to flow really nicely. And you would have people in the comments, there'd be someone who showed up late, or they weren't quite, usually it's probably someone who showed up late, and they would type in and be like, maybe I think it was one time where Jeff mentioned like summer, or, I probably wasn't even Jeff, it was probably one of the attendees, or, someone who's being interviewed and mentioned like, oh, it's summer or something. And someone would be like, wait, what? Is this a recording? And then people would chime in the chat like, yes, they said that. It's going to go back to live here soon, and they'll answer questions like, yeah, what do you think it is? And then people would just be like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. And it was fine. And then it once you had that thought out of someone's head, it was like, oh, wow, this is amazing, and it had so many good comments from people coming in. So, I think the important thing here, the important lesson for me and for us, is like, we were trying a new format, and we were trying a new format because we're exploring the possibilities, right? And we're exploring what would it be like to deliver an event like this more often. We see how powerful this event is and how much it can mean to people. And it's, so if we think about this and it's like, okay, well, if we did PLF Live multiple times a year, and the first thought is like, holy crap, we can't do that. That would be insane. That would take up so much resources. And so we had the thought of like, well, what could it be? How could we deliver something, and could we try this? And we thought, hey, let's give it a try. And I think the key, honestly, to pulling it off was that transparency and just being really clear with people, like, here's what we're doing, and we're doing it because we really firmly believe that it's still going to be a great experience for you.
How did you guys make a decision on where the live elements still had to be live? Like, what are those crucial elements for something like this that okay, these things have to be live. Okay, we can use this pre-recorded. And how did you approach that?
That's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of spots where you can cut the recordings, a lot of spots you can include or not include. And it's a 3-day event. I mean, it's something like 30 hours, if someone were to attend the entire event. It's a couple, including the bonus sessions and the bonus coaching and, the VIP Q&As and all that kind of stuff. But I think the real question was like, does doing this live make someone have a better experience? Does doing something live move someone further along with learning and implementing? And if the answer was yes, then we tended to default to making those live. And if the answer was like no, then we defaulted to not messing with what, because this is the thing, these were the recordings of our best ever performance at PLF Live. So we knew this worked. We knew this was fantastic content that people loved. So our default was to try to not mess with it too much, while keeping all the parts that were going to be really valuable to keep live. The parts that interaction mattered.
I would say the same, and yeah, Chris, coaching, Q&A, the stuff that was super interactive, the breakouts, the stuff where people, we were asking them to take part in it, those parts were the parts that were live.
And I'm curious for you, Jeff, specifically, because Sunday you were kind of more live Sunday than other days, which, usually if you've been delivering for 2 days, energy, I'm sure you're always energized, right, when you're in an event, but like the energy level, I'm curious, was the energy level for you or the focus different on Sunday coming into that last day versus previous PLF lives? How did you approach that?
One of the things that we do really, really well with PLF Live and with all of our events is we are extraordinary creating community and creating a culture and creating this bubble of 3 days of just unlimited possibility. It's almost like we want to take people into an altered state so they can achieve more, so they can do more, so they can see more, so that they can see a possibility that they don't get normally walking around. And it's something I love to do. And I didn't, when I first started doing these events way back in 2010 is when I realized that wow, what I'm creating here is different. And I've been to a lot of conferences and a lot of workshops, but this is different. And frankly, I enter into an altered state. Like it's crazy, just this state of grace and just, and I don't even know how to describe, just like a place where I'm just at my best. So we have Friday and it was a very different experience. And we had a lot of tech problems on Friday, like crazy, crazy tech problems. And we had to we were doing a lot of dancing, a lot of jumping in live where we didn't expect. But Saturday morning, so that was day one, Saturday morning, so the morning of day two, I just woke up and I was right in that state of just grace, and just that altered state in the absolute best way of just like, I am in this moment where I am doing my best work in the world, where I'm helping almost 1,000 people see a bigger future and build a bigger future and get motivated for that. And so, when I woke up Saturday morning, it's like, wow, that thing, it worked. It worked on me. It totally left me in that same state as every other PLF Live. And then things went a little smoother on day two. But then I woke up at 3 a.m, actually, on Sunday morning, going into day 3, and just realizing that with what I had seen and what was going on, I wanted to make some fairly significant changes to what was going to happen on day 3. And so I just got up at 3 a.m. and I started working, and I created a new day 3 and we only used very little of the recordings just because of that perspective of having gone through those 2 days and seeing things I wanted to change. And also the things that were, every time there's an event, there's things that happen in the room, even though this was being played out virtually across the world, there are themes that come up and there's stories that come up. And I wanted to be able to react to that. So I'm like, this is my sandbox, and I'm going to remake day 3 right now. And so, I just got going and ended up being just an incredible, incredible day 3.
And it's another advantage of the format as well, is you have your, you have your planned session, for example, in which you might have some live elements and pre-recorded elements, but it's always easy enough to just default over to saying, hey, let's do this one live. Like it's, we can replace things at will as it seems like, fits with the flow and what's happening and what's, actually occurring within the event and what you see people are looking for at the moment. And if you think that like, oh, well, maybe they're going in a different direction, or, hey, there's this thing that came up we want to address, like it's easy enough to pop those things in.
One thing you mentioned just now, Jeff, was that there were some, say, tech issues at various parts, or, things like that, integrating, say, recording from the perspective of being in the Zoom room and being from the attendee perspective. I thought it was really masterful how you guys handled those things and those moments. I wondered if you could just speak to that and like how it is that you incorporate, because these are the kind of things that I think people, when they say, I'm going to put my own event on, and then some tech thing happens, and then all of a sudden it's like panic, or there's like they shut down, or it maybe has the potential to ruin an event if something like your connection goes out, right? So you guys, that didn't happen at this event for you guys. I was super impressed. I mean, I've been here a long time, but I was really impressed and masterful how you guys handle those things. Can you talk about that?
Well, I would just say that we've been doing a lot of live broadcasts for probably about 6 years now. And over the years, we've had just about every possible tech problem. Well, no, I shouldn't say that, because we have some brand new ones, but we've been through just every kind of issue that you could possibly have. And I'll let Dan speak to some of the craziness that we just had, because for those of you out there, so Dan is our marketing lead. He runs all our marketing in the company, but he also at times steps into this role of being live producer. And that's, I'll let him speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very stressful situation for sure. If something goes down, we had some just outright hardware failures for sure that made things just completely stop working right in the middle of it. And I always say, live breaks things. Things tend to, especially you're streaming. It's one thing to hop onto a Zoom call and be on a Zoom call for half an hour or for an hour, but when you're streaming for 10 hours consecutively, it's a lot more time and a lot more opportunity that things can go wrong for sure. And then you don't really have the best opportunity to correct if something's going live or goes wrong, because you are live and everything's streaming. So if you think, hey, I might be able to try this and we'll see if it happens. Well, if it fails, then it looks extra bad in front of everybody.
I feel like you guys have contingencies in place in some capacity, right?
Like over the years, we have had it, just because, like Dan said, live breaks things, and maybe it doesn't break things, but it just things can break, and especially like Dan said, it was 10 hours the first day and 11 hours the second day, and there's a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong. And when things go wrong, I guess I switch into a state of, right now I am on stage and we've got 700 or 800 or up to 1,000 people live, and I'm holding their experience right now. I'm holding their future right now, because what we do is we help them build unbelievable futures. We help people launch businesses and launch products, and if that we are holding their future, and if something goes wrong and all of a sudden we lose our audio, or we lose our video, or we lose our connection, or the recording breaks and I have to jump in, how I react, I have this enormous responsibility. I have when I'm on stage, I have an enormous responsibility to take care of them, to demonstrate leadership, to be a leader. I know they're going to be, that their experience is going to be impacted by how I react. And I also know they're going to learn from how I react. And so it's an enormous responsibility. So for me, it's like, no matter how crazy and how haywire things are, it's my job to be a pro. It doesn't mean I can be colloquial. I can be, oh my gosh, I can't believe what happened. You guys wouldn't believe this. This is crazy. I can be very familiar. I can be casual, but I'm a pro. It's my job. It's my job to take care of them. And if they see me panicking, then 6 months from now, when they're doing something, they're doing their broadcast, then maybe they panic. So it's my job to take care of them and show true leadership. And to me, it's like the time you need to be a leader is when things go sideways.
We did have, and I saw that not only from you, but also just from the rest of the team that is in there as well with us. And we do have the benefit of having a team that has gone through some of these events before. And so, maybe you're doing your first event and you just got to be that leader for yourself. But what's funny is in your community, if you set it up properly, we saw leaders in our community step up and be leaders for that group and say things like, don't worry, stand by, they're going to fix this, they'll be back in a sec. Like the community, not even just our people, like they were in our community stepping up to do that. And I think part of what I saw was on the front end, you guys were setting that up to be the community of leaders and people who would step in and know this experience can be great for people. And so by creating leaders throughout the event and encouraging people to be that way and setting up that positive mindset so the culture in the room is that this is live, this is going to work out, this is that allowed those moments to not tank the event in some way, right? Or really negatively affect it. It all became part of the experience and in some ways made it special, because there was one moment where they're like, wow, I can't believe they've literally had almost every tech challenge in the book thrown at them and we're still kicking butt at this event. Like they were impressed at a different level. And I think that's some magic that I think you created. And a lesson in there for people probably to take is that you don't have to panic. It can be organic in that moment. And it's how you react to these things that matter more than, the thing itself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like when you got a toddler and they fall down and it's like, if you panic when they fall down, they're going to panic and start screaming. Or if you just go, oh, look at you fell down, boom, you pick them up. And I got to give a shout out to our team too, because like the one time our internet went completely dark. We just completely lost all internet here. And I think it was about 15 seconds till Barry was on. Barry's one of our coaches and he was like instantly on, flips on his camera and and it took another 10 seconds for Ben to get there. And they're doing the song and dance, just taking care of people. And it was just amazing. Then we went to like my phone. Then I did what do they call it? A hotspot to my phone. So then I came back up, but Dan was still minutes away from having the whole studio come up. And I come on, a minute later and there's Ben and Barry just taking care of people. And so I just got a shout out, we just got this amazing team.
It does help with that fear going into it. Now, if someone's doing through their first event or going on into this kind of thing, probably plan for some contingencies, have a few backups in mind. It's good to have that as part of your plan going into an event, in case, but it is something to roll with the punches, right? Like roll with what it is. It's going to happen. Like you've had all sorts, this was just what happened at this event. I could think of other times where we've had crazy stuff happen at other events where you couldn't have planned for it. But you just roll with it, and that mindset that it's going to work out. You just need to step into that leadership role. I think that people who do that will see the impact of that on their people and in the culture, because they'll be impressed and there'll be a level of like, oh wow, this is what leadership is. This is how it's supposed to be.
Especially if there's not a big bunch of downtime, people are going to stick around for a little bit. And then if you just come back in with the same energy and keep rolling and, the toddler analogy is a great one. If you act like it's no big deal, then it's forgotten about pretty quickly,
I'd say within like 2 or 3 minutes after we're back, nobody's even thinking about it, right? Like it's not a thing anymore. The chat roll keeps rolling. And so whatever happened in that moment, people forget about it. It's fine. And then they're back into the content, back into the value, back into the culture. And it's not that hard to get it back if you lose it, right? And I think that people almost treat it like they're worried about it, like stand-up comedy, like, oh, if you get the audience to turn on you or something, then you can't get them back. Like, that's not how it is with an event. You can get them right back if you've got value there to give them.
And I do think, you used the word culture there. And I think the creating a culture in the community is so critical. And that's what's so amazing about events is that you get so many entrepreneurs together and they're all in this space of building something great for themselves and imagining that possibility and working towards that possibility, working towards creating the future they want. And you get them in that state and it's magic. I mean, that's why I love I just love live events, and they've made all the difference for me. I mean, just when I go back, like it's been 25 years now since I went to my first marketing event. And I spent 5 years going to them before, or more than 5 years, a lot of years going to them. And then I started putting them on. I've had this message many times. If you go through all my YouTube, all these podcasts, wherever, get out to live events. Get out to live events. And, these days there's so many great virtual events, and they're amazing as well. Get out to live events. They will make a difference for you.
Is there any live event that you want to talk about coming up, Jeff? I feel like that leads right into something right now when this comes out. Isn't there something coming up pretty soon?
The funny thing is I've got this.
Or is this full? Because I feel like it's getting real close to full.
It's close to full right now, but it's not, as we record this, it's not full. We've got
live events are amazing, right? But this was something virtual. And how are there times when it really makes more sense, or where there's more intimacy, say, that you want to create for people than what you create at, say, PLF Live?
Of course, there's all different types of events. And in fact, we've got our launch intensive coming up, and that one is going to be in person. And that one, we've got a cap of 40 people. What that allows you to do is it allows, the intimacy is obviously completely different scale. And it allows you to tailor the event to who's in the room, and it allows you to actually do the work in the room. And so, there's so many different formats for events, and the big ones they're tremendous energy, and they're fun to do, and I love doing them. And I absolutely love, going deep with a small group of people. And that's actually I've run far more of those events. I've done so many masterminds, and this intensive it is another new format that we're trying out, but with 40 people in the room, it's just going to be pure magic.
But a lot of the same energy, I bet, too. I'm excited to hear how this is, because I feel like if we created that with the hundreds of people in the virtual environment, to be in the room is going to be like with 40 people, it's just going to be so.
Yeah, it's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be so
awesome. Yeah, that's going to be great. So if you want to learn more about that intensive, I'm going to put it in the show notes. Yeah, I think we're right about time for this episode. And those were some awesome observations from PLF Encore. Can't wait to see when this comes up again. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And as usual, we hope this conversation inspires you to dare to launch. Hey, Launch family, one more thing before you go. There's a few spots left in Jeff's Launch Intensive workshop. This is a live in-person training with Jeff, Dan, and Justin in the room. Only 40 people are going to be there. Small, intimate, and super, super powerful. If you'd like to check that out, all you have to do is go to getyouLaunched.com today. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.